introduce Stephen Kapos, Holocaust survivor and activist. Stephen was also behind the banner leading the demonstration on January the 18th and has since been questioned by police outrageously, so full solidarity with Stephen. And I'd also like to direct you to, if you have time, please have a look on the Counterfire website, because Michael Lavalette recently did a fascinating interview with Stephen Kapos, and it really is worth a read. So, Stephen, over to you.
Thank you for inviting me. I was only 7 years old during World War II when it reached my hometown, Budapest. But I still have very vivid memories of the war itself, and also of a period of a degree of democracy that followed liberation by the Red Army. So I will approach our present theme, was World War II a war for democracy, from the lens of the Hungarian experience and the personal experience. I am aware that the answer to this question may vary dramatically from country to country. For a brief historical background, Hungary was on the losing side of World War I, and the Austria-Hungary Empire, in the Trianon peace treaty that followed, lost 2/3 of its 1,000-year held historic territories to its neighboring countries. This national trauma has its reverberations to the present day even. Viktor Orban, even today, stokes the grandiose nationalist imperial nostalgia and speaks not only for Hungary, but the Carpathian Basin, hinting at a greater Hungary, again, in some not too distant future. The interwar years saw the rule of the regent, one Admiral Horthy, who graduated from an initial rule of white terror and anti-Semitic pogroms in 1919 to a steady right-wing authoritarian semi-fascistic regime. The Communist Party was banned, trade unions suppressed, latent anti-Semitism prevailed, and Europe's first racist anti-Semitic law enacted, the so-called numerus clausus law, passed in the early 1920s, beating Mussolini to it. This limited the number of Jews allowed to enter professions. The obsession with the recovery of the lost territories pushed the Horthy clique into the arms of the Nazis. And against Hitler's gifting via the Vienna Treaty of some, not all, of the lost territories, Hungary joined the Nazis in the Barbarossa attack on the Soviet Union in June 1941. We know where that led to total annihilation on the Eastern Front by the Red Army by 1943-44, particularly following the Great Battle of Kursk. By April 4th, 1945, the whole of Hungary was liberated from the by then occupying German forces. Returning to our theme, what kind of democracy followed after liberation? There was no tradition of true democracy in Hungary. Post-World War II, unrestricted multi-party political system was novel and experimental. The previously illegal Communist Party came into its own and contested the first few years of elections, but came into third place only, as the country's tradition has been dominantly conservative. The Social Democratic Party, the chief opposition of the interwar years, came second, and the winner in these early years was the rurally based so-called smallholders party, a small c conservative party. A few geopolitical considerations. At their World War II meeting in Moscow, Winston Churchill and Stalin agreed most famously on the back of an envelope, later confirmed during the Yalta Conference, the division of Europe into spheres of interests. Hungary fell into Stalin's sphere. No treaties were signed, and democratic renewal was to be enacted regardless of the agreed division, at least in the short term. But within the sphere of Stalin's influence, the long term could only mean Communist Party power. This was a cynical agreement with only an illusory period of temporary democracy. And it so happens that both the West and Stalin kept to this agreed division of spheres. For example, Greece was to be within the Western sphere, and so Stalin, true to his word, did not arm or support the post-World War II communist-led uprising in Greece. What is more, he came into serious conflict with Tito's Yugoslavia due to their solidarity and assistance to the Greek uprising. This and other independent policies of the Yugoslavs led to their ejection from the Soviet-led socialist camp by about 1948-49. The period of multi-party democracy in Hungary between 1945 and 1948 was an illusionary democracy. The Smallholders Party was leading a coalition government and nominated the Prime Minister and the President of the Republic. And the Communist Party and the Social Democratic Party both had some ministerial portfolios. But the key power factor in the political equation was the background presence of the occupying Soviet army on their bases, plus the Soviet head of the Allied Control Commission, with powers to intervene when necessary to prevent the restoration or re-emergence of reactionary fascist forces. In Hungary, this plenipotentiary in the background was Marshal Klement Voroshilov, a close friend and associate of Stalin and the past Minister of Defense of the Soviet Union. Mainly at his insistence, within the coalition government, the Interior Ministry was always held by the communists. Thus, the secret police was always under their control. By 1948, the Communist Party took undisputed sole control of the country and government. How was this achieved without a revolution when the party itself did not have majority support? How did the period of illusory democracy end? The method of taking power without bloodshed. 1. All parties were cajoled or forced into a single political entity, the so-called Patriotic People's Popular Front. Voting at elections thereafter was not for any single political party, but only for or against this united entity. This is how the famous 99.5% for results were achieved. 2. The chief opposition Conservative Smallholders Party was falsely accused of plotting neo-fascist restoration against the Republic. With the background support of the Soviet head of the Allied Control Commission, the party's leaders were exiled or arrested. 3. The Social Democrats were forced into a fusion with the Communist Party, jointly reforming under a new name, the Hungarian Workers' Party. The resisting social democrat leaders were arrested and jailed, and others bought off with ministerial appointments. During this period of this regime change, 2 presidents of the republic were arrested, one of the smallholders party, one social democrat. In the fight against Titoism, in the same period, 2 ministers of the interior, communist ministers, were arrested. Laszlo Rajk, executed after a short trial, and János Kádár, who was tortured in prison, but re-emerged in 1956. Sorry?
No.
Re-emerged in 1956 to eventually become the long-time leader of the Communist Party, again renamed, right into the late 1980s.
I was just saying that.
Would you just let Stephen finish? Thank you.
The infamous leader during the period of the short trials was Mátyás Rákosi. He and his ruling clique of 4 within the Politburo had no time for any pretense of democracy and always followed the biddings of the Stalinist Soviet leadership. Following Nikita Khrushchev's secret speech at the 20th Congress of the Communist Party of the USSR, where he denounced Stalin and his personality cult and the purges, the Hungarian Stalinist clique were fatally undermined. Their resistance to leaving power led to the 1956 uprising. But the West history of the post-war years also shows a promised attitude of democracy which was compromised. For example, we now know how the CIA used undemocratic means to foil a possible popular taking of power by the Italian Communist Party by funding the P2 network of conspiratorial right-wing organizations. The Marshall Plan was also a commercial tool of constructing US hegemony, not merely a constructive seeding of European economic revival. And soon the establishment of NATO solidified the original geographical and political division started by the back-of-the-envelope agreement by Churchill and Stalin during World War II. In conclusion, whilst World War II was a successful fight against and defeat of fascism, it did not directly aim at nor achieve true democracy in either Eastern plus West plus Central or in Western Europe. True democracy can only be delivered within a truly socialist context.